Advisory Committee co-chair. I'm just going to confirm people are here. Curtis Smithson.
Here.
Madhu Chandrasekhar.
Here.
Ron Foisey.
Here.
Elise Mialowski.
Here.
John Catino.
So Rachel, John Catino was replaced with Arnold Cohen. As his
Okay.
ED.
Arnold Cohen.
Probably update the script.
I'm here.
Great, thank you. Nisha Nanawari. Nope. Ted Barker Hook.
I'm here.
Okay. Staff, when I call your name, please respond. John Gelsich.
John Gilsich present.
All right, good evening. The open meeting of the Zoning Advisory Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with an act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. The act includes an extension until March 31st, 2023. Coming up real soon, John. Sooner than I want to think about. The new law allows public bodies to continue providing live, adequate alternate means of public access to the deliberations of the public body instead of holding meetings in a place that is open to the public and physically accessible. Adequate alternate means may include, without limitation, providing public access through telephone, internet, or satellite-enabled audio or video conferencing, or any other technology that enables the public to clearly follow the proceedings of the public body in real time. Second, the new law authorizes all members of a public body to continue participating in meetings remotely. The open meeting law's requirement that a quorum of the body and the chair or co-chair be physically present at the meeting location remains suspended. For this meeting, the Zoning Advisory Committee is convening by video conference with Zoom app as posted on the town's web meeting calendar and the ZAC agenda identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting may also be broadcast on HCAM through one or many of its channels or platforms. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Please be aware that others may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All right, good evening, everyone. Let's start with the first agenda item, which is renewable energy requirements for new construction, residential and commercial. So John, did you want to start us off? Give us a recap on that topic?
Sure. So this was something that I believe Elise had brought up and that we would talk at this meeting to see if there's anything that we can come up with for this annual town meeting. But I didn't have any background information to send out. I don't know if anyone else has anything. I think this was just kind of this is a good idea. What can we do? Let's brainstorm some ideas kind of a thing, unless I misunderstood what the last discussion was about.
So through the chair, if I may, I can just give a little information on what I've been reading about. So basically, the one thing I found with the most information is California. I've heard that DC and Maryland are soon going to be doing this, but they don't have anything written down or published that I could read about. But what I found, and after reading through California's new aggressive code, which is requiring solar panels to be put on all new construction, I don't think we will be able to pull anything off for this town meeting. And what it seems to me will be the best approach for this would be to try, if we want to try to create a bylaw, to try to create one for commercial or multifamily housing. John, I don't know if we would be able to apply this towards the MBTA buildings, because I guess it might be a restriction in zoning. But basically, one of the things that I found interesting in the California code, let me pull up my Word document, is that for low-rise multifamily structures, they are requiring that they must install solar PV, which are the solar panels that we know of, rooftop, and be battery ready. So it's not just having the solar panels, it's also having the battery ready, to rely less on the grid, because when you have, multifamily housing, there's more people using electricity in a smaller space. And they also included having EV parking spaces, which we're already going to be presenting, not for multifamily housing, but I think, in my opinion, it would be nice to see how the town responds in town meeting to our EV proposal. And if they are largely in favor of it, then I think we could push for something like this, for either residential or multifamily or both, new construction, or anything that would require, I guess, basically a new roof. But I don't think it is an easy thing to come up with for our town so quickly. I think it's going to take more time.
Through the chair, would this be more of a building department requirement or a zoning requirement? How is it fashioned there?
So if I may respond, in California, they have it as part of their building code. It's part of the new building code for the state requirement.
Okay,
So
that's what I was wondering.
We would have to come up with a more creative way to implement it into zoning.
Go ahead, John.
Ms. Chair, it seems like in California, it was enacted by the legislature. I guess the discussion here is whether a town like Hopkinton could make a requirement like that. I mean, it's a question in my mind. I think that was a good point. It seems kind of like a building code kind of a thing as opposed to zoning. Probably a good idea if everybody had solar panels on their roof, but I think a lot of thought and a lot of would have to go into it before the town would be able to make a move like that.
Great, thank you. John, did you want to comment?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So one of the things, and I don't know how many of you are aware of this, and I suspect Jeff might be raising his hand to talk about this, is that the new stretch code was released 2 days ago, or I guess put in place 2 days ago. It was released earlier than that. And I haven't really dove into it to see what it involves, and maybe Jeff can provide a background on this, but I have talked to some people in Westboro and in Hopkinton, and that the stretch code that we've already adopted includes certain provisions for renewable energy. There is a opt-in stretch code that I don't know if it's been released yet, but that opt-in will probably have more focused renewable energy type things in it that may go a little bit farther than the stretch code that we currently have adopted. So Hopkinton voted at town meeting years back to adopt the stretch code. And then if they adopt the stretch code, it's the Massachusetts version of the International Building Code's building code. There's the International Building Code, the IBC code, and then Massachusetts can make amendments to it. And the stretch code that I understand we have adopted includes those amendments. And then they continue to amend it as we move forward. And if you've already adopted the stretch code, you just automatically take in these new amendments. There's a third option, which is what I said before, the opt-in stretch code, which goes a little bit farther than the stretch code. Again, I don't really know what the difference is at this point. I need to talk to some people about that and review. And I saw Jeff sent a link, though. I think he may have only sent it to me because I think I'm the only one that gets chats.
No, I got it.
Send it to everybody. Okay, great. So
Yep.
maybe that's something that you can look at and see what it involves. But to my understanding, there is some renewable energy associated with that, potentially rooftop solar. I know we were talking about geothermal. I don't know how that would work, though. I know Framingham is doing something with geothermal, and it's a looped system, and it serves, residential, commercial, and all that kind of stuff together. To answer the question of can this go in zoning, it could potentially, because I don't know if the stretch code applies to multifamily. I would assume it does, but there could be requirements that if we want to go a little bit farther than the stretch code, but not necessarily adopt the opt-in stretch code, you could do those things related to commercial or multifamily. But again, we don't really have a multifamily district that's active in Hopkinton. So I think we need to review the multifamily districts and see if we want to adjust those to be something other than what they currently are. But this topic, I don't want to talk too much because I know this is a DAC meeting and not a John meeting, but we can talk about other renewable requirements under this agenda bullet. So I don't want to limit it to just rooftop solar. If people have other ideas that could potentially be introduced as zoning amendments or zoning bylaws rather than building code. So just wanted to give you that background in case anyone's unfamiliar with the building code changes that have taken place recently.
Great, thank you, John. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
So I'm Jeff Rowland, Chair of the Sustainable Green Committee. So yeah, John gave a good summary of the new stretch energy code and went into effect a couple days ago. But the municipal opt-in code is very interesting. It was specifically designed to meet the Massachusetts 2050 net zero goals. So it does things like require that all new construction is wired for full electrification of buildings. It doesn't specifically ban fossil fuels because we can't do that at the moment. That's a separate process, but it really pushes things in that direction. But I think it does require it for new construction over 4,000 square feet, for example. It's got requirements on requiring charging stations in various settings, EV charging stations, that is. So I've just seen that it has potentially a lot of overlap with some of the discussions that this group has been having. So I think that's worth a review. And to John's point, and what you were talking about earlier, it's kind of a gray area as far as which group in town moves forward with these things. So the municipal opt-in has to be taken to town meeting. Getting it on the warrant within this month and fully understanding it and getting it on the warrant within this month seems a little hasty. John suggested that we review it with the town building inspector inspection department as well first, but there will likely be a special town meeting in the fall that we could discuss it at as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
John, did you want to respond to that?
Not necessarily to that. I just saw that Linda Chuss, who I think is, yeah, there she is, as a participant on the meeting, sent a question that says zoning versus building. Can someone please explain that to me? So just to quickly explain, zoning is, and this isn't true for everything, but zoning is effectively stuff that's outside the building, and the building code is stuff that's inside the building. So how the structure is built is the building code, and then how the site and rest of the area on the property is regulated, parking, dimensional, that type of thing, where the building can be located. So they usually don't cross. Zoning does not pertain to things inside the building, and building code sometimes, most of the time, does not pertain to things outside the building, though I do understand, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, the opt-in energy code requires EV parking. And I think you may have said that already.
I think it does, yeah.
Yeah. So that would apply to outside the building, but in that certain situation.
Great, thank you. Elise, did you want to make a comment?
Sorry, still muted. Yes, I just wanted to add on to what we were all saying. In a presentation to the planning board, Jeff presented a really nice PowerPoint, and one of the action plans that that the Sustainable Green Committee was saying was requiring all buildings to have eco roofs. So I was thinking if we don't want to be super aggressive with solar, we could just change, so like instead of saying all buildings have to have solar panels, we could say eco roof, because I like that term. And that could, and then we would have to define what an eco roof is. So it could be solar, it could be drainage, it could be having a blue roof, which I looked up and is a type of like living roof, which has plants growing on top and then a special kind of drainage that either can go back into the plants or excess will drain off. But it's basically every part of the rainwater that's collected on the roof is reused somehow. So if we felt that the town wasn't ready to have solar pushed so heavily on them, we could change that to eco roof. The only reason why I would not prefer to do that is because Massachusetts seems to have this pretty aggressive plan to try to get everybody off of natural gas and to rely heavily on electricity. And as far as I know, the state doesn't really produce that much of its own electricity. So if we don't have a plan to start creating more energy, like from solar or other ways, I just am a little worried where all of this power is going to come from if everything is moving towards electric.
Great, thank you. Does anybody else on the board have a comment that hasn't spoken yet?
I can offer, I did about a half hour of research today, which isn't enough, but that's what I had time for today. And I did see there are initiatives in Massachusetts. I don't know if they are building codes or zoning codes, but the city of Somerville in recent years has talked about and has debated, I don't know in what entity within the government of Somerville, exactly what we're talking about with green roofs, blue roofs, and or solar panels on roofs. There's also a bill moving through the Massachusetts State Senate requiring, if I remember correctly, solar panels on all commercial or multi-family dwellings, but I might be getting confused between what I read about Somerville and what I read about the State House. I think that bill was initially put out there in, I want to say 2020 by representatives and a state senator from somewhere near us. But it wasn't Hopkinton's reps or state senator. But the last report, when I clicked a couple times, said that it had left a committee with favorable recommendation and was heading to a bigger committee, and that was sometime last year. So the state and Somerville are talking about these same initiatives, all moving in the same direction. So I don't think it would be comparing Hopkinton to just California, those crazy Californians. This is going on in our state, our Commonwealth. And so I think we would be in keeping if we explored these kind of initiatives.
Great, thank you, Ted.
If I may, that bill that Ted's referring to that went into committee, I think I was looking up the same one, and that became part of the municipal opt-in code that's available now, those requirements. So it's worth a look.
Great, thank you. I want to recognize Linda Chus. Linda, can you just give us your name and your address, please?
Hi, sure. My name's, sorry, I'll go on video. My name is Linda Chus. I'm also on the Sustainable Green Committee with Jeff and Amy here. Thank you for explaining the difference between building and zoning codes. I'm sorry, I don't know that. I'm learning. So is solar on a rooftop considered building code then? Because it's outside the building, and if you had solar panels next to a building, not on the building roof, is that considered building versus zoning? We're just trying to understand where the line is drawn.
John, did you want to respond to that?
And let me just add a third question there. So you mentioned the geothermal project in Framingham. That's actually a pilot project that Framingham's doing with, I think it's NSTAR. It is NSTAR. So with Eversource, sorry, with Eversource. And so again, geothermal is outside the building, but connects to the building. So I'm just trying to understand what in the building versus outside the building means.
Yep. So, rooftop solar is technically not regulated by zoning, but it technically is regulated by zoning. So you don't have to get a permit to do rooftop solar, but it explicitly states in the zoning, or it's going to, if we pass the bylaw that Zach recommended to go to planning board, it's going to explicitly state in the site plan requirements that rooftop solar does not trigger site plan review. And you can do it basically essentially with a building permit. So then by that definition, it would be regulated by the building code. Solar that is accessory is also not subject to site plan review. Solar as a use is subject to a special permit and site plan review. So the commercial ground mounted solar arrays are regulated by zoning. Accessory, so if you had a house and you put 2 canopies in your backyard, those would be accessory to your house and therefore not covered by zoning. I would assume they'd be covered by the building code, but zoning says that they're not required to go through site plan review. So I guess in a way that zoning does regulate them, but it regulates them by saying we're not regulating it. I know it's a little confusing bit of an answer, but there's kind of a gray area with solar and rooftop solar at this point. We are able to regulate it. We have chosen not to because we want to encourage that type of development. If you have any follow-up, I can maybe make that a little bit clearer. It's kind of confusing.
No, I think I get it. And then same thing about the geothermal would be the same.
So geothermal is nothing that we regulate at this point. So if somebody wanted to come in and do a geothermal system, it would probably fall under building permit because zoning doesn't mention it at all. And to be honest, I don't fully understand how it works, so I can't speak accurately as to if zoning were to regulate it, how zoning would regulate it.
And through the chair, I would think the geothermal would be considered part of the HVAC system of the house. Therefore, building would probably regulate it, even though it is outside of the house. Just my thoughts.
Okay. Elise, did you want to make some more comments?
I just had a sort of follow-up question for John. If solar is regulated through zoning by us not regulating it because we're trying to encourage it, could we then regulate it more strictly to encourage, or I don't want to say force, but I guess force people to do it?
I don't see why not. I mean, we've talked about in the planning world, we've talked about requiring rooftop solar as part of site plan review, as a standard for site plan. So in Hopkinton, our site plan standards are in zoning. I don't see why that wouldn't be possible to require it. I don't think you'd be able to prohibit it. I don't think anyone wants to, but I don't think you'd be able to prohibit it because of Chapter 3 or Section 3A of Chapter 40A, which basically makes solar protected in a certain way. But to my understanding, we can require it through zoning in certain ways. I don't know if any town has, and I don't know if those towns that have, if they have been challenged in court. So, that answer is still, I guess, being found out through the process. But everything that I've read, I don't think, and everyone I've talked to, I don't see why we couldn't.
Could we ask the town attorney their opinion?
I don't think you're going to get a very straight answer from them, but we can.
Okay.
Just to clarify, I don't know. We probably wouldn't be able to require rooftop solar on single family residential because we don't really regulate single family residential. You might be able to require it for multifamily and commercial because those are more strictly regulated. Single family is just as a policy statewide kind of allowed to do whatever they want to do. So there may be nuances to what you can and cannot regulate, but if the building code can do it for single family homes, then maybe that's all we need.
Through the chair, we do regulate subdivisions through zoning though, don't we?
No, we regulate subdivisions through subdivision regulations. We regulate the open space subdivision through zoning for a special permit, but then the subdivision itself is regulated through the subdivision regs, which is not zoning.
Okay.
And then like village housing and garden apartment housing are not technically subdivisions. They don't have to go through the subdivision approval process. They've got to go through site plan.
Elise, did you want to continue on?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to keep brainstorming out loud if that's okay with you. So could we, in theory, say something along the lines of like duplexes or garden apartments or any dwelling where there is more than one family living there? If there is new construction, they would have to put solar, or if there is anything that requires them to put on a new roof, they would have to do solar, kind of like what we were doing with the parking lots. Like if they have to restructure it, they have to add the EV spaces. Whereas like if you already have a building, if you have to put in a new roof, you have to then put the solar, or would that fall under building code?
Through the chair, I think we probably could. I mean, everything is going to be, there's really no, can we do this? Because the state doesn't give guidance. So it's really do it. And then if it gets challenged, you find out in court if it doesn't work. It's not the most efficient way of doing it, but the state kind of lets it happen that way. To do what you were discussing, we'd have to amend the garden apartment because it's not in effect right now because we're above 10%. The question about duplexes is if you require them to do it with a new roof, that significantly adds the expense of a roof to somebody who might not be able to afford essentially double the price of a new roof. And then that gets into questions of, can you do that on a moral basis of requiring a family to pay double for a roof when they might not be able to afford a regular roof? And where does that come into play? And do they get any assistance for that? So I would say new construction potentially, because you can pass the cost down to, the developer can do it, or they can pass the cost down and whoever buys it can afford it. That argument can be made, but an existing house with a new roof might be tricky to make that argument.
Through the chair, a couple other things I saw today, and again, it was rapid fire research and it's mixed up in my head. But my initial reaction is I'm on board if we had the power to, and if nobody would challenge us, make everybody have solar whenever they build new stuff. But that may not be politically feasible if we move in that direction. So I threw out last week or last meeting the thought of looking at percentages, and I don't know what they would be, but if it would be, if we sense that the town would be more supportive, if we said, I don't know, if we're not talking single homes, maybe it makes no sense. But my thought before was 1 in 3 of the homes in the development needs to be outfitted for solar or something like that. One of the things I read today, and I didn't even realize it was a possibility that this wasn't true, is homes or buildings had to either have solar or they had to have roofs strong enough to support solar down the road. I didn't know anyone built roofs that couldn't support solar. So I don't know how much of a real thing that is, but that was in either what I read with the state or what I read with what Somerville was talking about doing. And it reminded me of what we talked about with EV charging in parking spaces, that you can put in the full charger, or you can make sure that it's ready to become a full charger and do more of it. So if we move forward and we're trying to navigate to what could be palatable for the town, those were some other things that popped up for me.
If I may add about solar, so a roof has to be oriented in the right direction for solar to work. That hasn't been brought up. So I don't know if that's part of site planning, if that's part of, it's just not every house can have solar. And I don't know how you deal with that. And then there are a few other points. One is solar can be rented. You don't have to own it. So a company puts the panels on your house just to address the equity issue someone was talking about. And then there's also, I guess those were the two main points. Just, I don't know if you've thought about the roof orientation.
Through the chair.
Yes, go ahead, Ted.
We have talked about the roof orientation. When this idea was first brought up at the public forum, Chuck Joseph mentioned that as a potential barrier to us. And one of my reasons for thinking percentages of homes in the development was precisely that, is there may be homes that aren't oriented in a way that makes it work. But it's always good to be reminded of that. They do have to be, I guess, ideally south-facing roofs is the best way to go, I think. So yeah, it would be something to keep in mind. I agree.
Through the chair, if I may add something. We also don't want to be too restrictive about language with solar panels, because there's solar shingles and there's other options that could, I mean, if we're talking like 10 years down the line, who knows how fast the technology is going to advance. And those are not as heavy as solar panels. So it wouldn't be, I mean, I have no idea the cost. I've never looked into it. But, you know, there's more options coming than just solar panels. So.
Mm-hmm. So at least would you be willing to sort of amend what you're trying to do to have it be more renewable energy, instead of saying solar, just to sort of broaden it a little bit to include future possibilities? We said renewable energy, and then X percentage of the homes in Hopkinton would need to have some form of renewable energy. Is that?
Yeah, the words that I was thinking were sustainability, or I wrote it down. Hold on.
Because I know there are some utilities that allow you to like purchase credits for renewable energy as part of your home electric bill.
Yeah.
So you can, as a homeowner, you don't have to have the renewable energy at your home. You can sort of purchase these credits, and then that goes towards a renewable energy source.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay, I like that too. So the verbiage that I was thinking of would be require measures for energy conservation or sustainable design. Because it's a little more open.
Okay, and how would you define energy conservation?
I'm not exactly sure off the top of my head, but that's something, you know, we could think about more and discuss in more detail.
Okay.
But like you said, I don't want to limit people, especially because I know it is a financial commitment. And so if people want to rent solar panels, they can't afford to buy them, or they don't want to buy them because maybe they don't think they're going to stay in their house forever. Or what you were just talking about, I think those are all great ideas. We just need to add them all together into the language of what we're trying to say.
Jeff or Linda, do you have any contacts at Eversource that you could reach out to ask about renewable energy credits and this pilot in Framingham?
I don't know too much about the pilot project in Framingham besides an article I've read about it. But one thing I did want to add was that next week, our committee is presenting to the select board. And one thing we're proposing to them is a municipal aggregation plan, which is the town negotiating a bulk rate for power on behalf of residents. It's got multiple benefits. One is, cost saving for a residents, but the other is we can actually define a greener mix of the energy that the town is buying on the market than the Massachusetts defaults. So we can have, plan options that are, say, 100% green, for example, for that to be available to people, because that's related to what you mentioned a minute ago, Rachel.
Great, thank you.
I would add, so the thing that's going on in Framingham is a geothermal heating. It's not solar. So solar is your renewable energy. Elise, what you referred to before about conservation measures is very broad. Renewable energy is a subset of that, and solar is a subset of that, and solar panels that you own is a subset of that. But I liked the idea of I don't know if there's a way to say the town for whatever it is, multifamilies or commercial or new construction, X percent of the energy must be renewable. I don't know how that gets enforced, but whether it's done through you buy solar panels, you use green energy, you use municipal aggregation, you rent solar panels, but I don't know, to my ears, that sounds wonderful. I have no idea how practical that is. And that's one subset of a way to make buildings more sustainable.
Great, thank you. Were there any other comments from the board? No? So next steps, Elise, did you want to try to put together like a proposal based on this discussion? And I'm happy to help out too. Write up something that we could include as a proposal for the planning board.
Sure. I will definitely need help with it, but I'm happy to work on it with someone or people.
Great. Okay. Were there any other comments on this topic? No? Okay. Guess we can close the topic. John, were there any other agenda items?
Just the minutes
today?
of December 12th.
Just the minutes. Okay.
Sorry, December 20. When do we meet? 21st or 12th? 21st, right?
I don't know. I
I
feel
don't know. Let me look. It says the 12th.
It says the 12th, but oh no, we did meet the 12th. Yes, it is the 12th. Sorry.
Okay, so taking any comments on the minutes from the meeting of December 12th? Anybody have changes, additions?
Look good to me.
Yep, that was fine.
They look good to me. Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
I'd
So
like to
moved.
make that motion. Or I'll second if Curtis made the motion. It doesn't matter to me.
To me either.
We'll give you the motion, Curtis. I'd like to
Okay.
second Curtis's motion.
Great, thank you. So we need roll call vote. Ron Boise,
Yes.
Curtis Smithson,
Yes.
Elise Smielowski,
Yes.
Ted Barker Hook,
Oh, yes.
Arnold Cohen,
Yes,
Curtis Smithson.
I've already voted.
Okay, did I miss anybody?
Yeah,
Buddy.
me, but I was absent for the
Oh, sorry.
meeting, so I don't know if it counts, so abstain.
You can vote even if you're not there.
Yes, then.
Okay, I vote yes, so sounds like it passes. Any other topics that people would like to bring up? No? John, when is our next ZAC meeting? Do we have one on the books yet?
I think we do.
The
Yep, it
30th.
looks like the 30th. Yep.
January 30th. Okay. John, has there been any discussion about the COVID protocols that are ending at the end of March of this year? I can say
There's
this year
been
now.
there's been a lot of discussion, and from what we understand or what I understand from multiple sources that know better than me, is that the COVID protocols will probably never go away. The remote meeting will probably stick because so many people like it and so many towns like it. So we haven't gotten any updates as to what's going to happen definitely, but the sentiment that I've understood from multiple sources is that you could probably plan on meeting remotely as long as you want, how we've been doing it. So I'll update you when I hear anything concrete, but right now it's still up in the air.
Great. Thank you so much for that. It's helpful. All right. So we'll meet again January 30th. Do I have a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call. Curtis Smithson,
Yes.
Ron Foisey,
Yes.
Ted Barker Hook,
Yes.
Madhu Chandrasekhar,
yes.
Elise Mielowski.
Yes.
Who am I missing? Ron Foisey
Yes.
and Arnold Cohen.
Yes.
Rachel Rawson's a yes. Thank you, everyone.
That was
Happy
quick
New
and easy,
Year.
Karen. Thank you.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Thank
Have a
you.
great night. Bye.
Time for the Celtics
Bye.
game. Good.